Akshay. I'm moderating this session. So today an exclusive virtual discussion on this global supply chain response with our eminent and local experts like Mr. Atiq, Mr. Ferdoush SALEHEEN, and Mr. Charlie. So before I start, I would like to invite our president, Mr. Asghar Ali, say a few words to all of us. Mr. Asghar.
Yeah, very good evening to everybody. My special gratitude to the learned speaker for having time for us. We have with us Mr. Charlie, a global icon on supply chain management. He is the chairman and CEO of Purchasing, Procurement and Supply Institute of Asia. He sits in a lot of boards. What's not, he is also a member of the board of MLS, Supply Chain Management Program of ITC. And we have with us Mr. Saleheen, very renowned and seasoned leader, supply chain leader in Bangladesh. And we have also Mr. Atiq, is a very successful supply chain professional and who is working in Ericsson, Canada now. So at this time, actually, we are in a very difficult situation. This pandemic virus affects all of our like parts and particle. What we can say, it affects our family, our society, our business, and whatnot. Actually, it is not a normal situation. So extraordinary situation needs extraordinary treatment. So we are asking and we are requesting our learned speaker to share their response on this situation. So over to our learned speakers. Thank you.
So thank you, Asghar. So the global supply chain has disruption in many different sectors, and there's a many shortage of products and raw materials in which supply chain professionals need to handle intelligently and efficiently. So to mitigate the impact of disruption, we'd like to hear from our experts, from our panelists. So first of all, I'm inviting you, our first speaker, Mr. Ferdoush SALEHEEN. I prefer that he have to introduce himself better than me so that audience and participants can know about him and his presentation regarding the response. Thank you, Mr. Ferdoush SALEHEEN.
Thank you very much. I'm Ferdoush SALEHEEN. Good evening, everyone. It's really wonderful, and thank you very much once again for inviting me. And I am absolutely delighted to speak to the audience. And before I start and sharing my thoughts, I hope and pray that you are doing fine and safe, and please do take care of yourself and your family members. You know, the COVID-19 and its impact, obviously there will be a lot of questions, a lot of curiosities, like how bad is going to be the economy, what are the scenarios of the recovery path, whether there is any lasting structure from the crisis. In reality, the projection and indexes are not going to answer all the questions accurately, as it will depend on many things. However, it is obvious that the global economy have a deep recession, and Bangladesh is not an exception. Based on the industry experts, journals, and opinions, and our local knowledge, I will recommend 8 areas to focus, particularly companies like our industry, food and beverage, or poultry industry who are operating in Bangladesh. Number 1, adopt a crisis management strategy during the ensuring the health and safety of the employees. I will not be explaining each and every line. I will be very brief because I know that there are other members. But during this time in Bangladesh, we can see that particularly the pharmaceutical industry, food and beverage industry, we are still operating our distribution channel. Companies like local companies, Pran, Akis, all the companies, you name it, they're to some extent encouraging or forcing their distribution people to go and ensure that products are available in the outlets. And to be very honest with you, in many extent, we can see that the health and safety is not properly ensured. So we need to have a very sustainable crisis management strategy where health and safety can be taken place on a very first priority. Number two, it is a very high time that we need to decide, and we need to have a very flexible resourcing strategy, and there should be a striking balance in what are the areas we should have automation in the factory, we should have automation in the company, and what are the areas human intervention is required. I have visited many companies when I was working in LG, that for the material requirement planning, material management, factory, there is no human intervention is required. So we need to be really, really prepared for that, for like managing IT and e-commerce system. And this is very important country like Bangladesh, that we need to be very focused on the supply side, particularly companies like multinational companies like Unilever, Nestle, Reckitt Benckiser. We need to focus on the suppliers and supplier side, and at the same time, we should know who are the raw material supplier, because that has a very spiral impact in the availability of the product. And instead of focusing on one country, even if the price is cheaper, we should, I think time has come to consider multi-location manufacturing sites. And we should heavily invest time and resources on the demand side, because the COVID-19, it will have a great impact each and every country, irrespective of the region. So the consumer behaving at purchasing power, their demographic, psychographic impact will change. Because at this moment, the item which is in a very high demand, it's a very short time spike. But many areas like electronic industry, luxury products, it will have a long-lasting impact. So we need to focus what are the areas that consumers are shifting their purchasing behavior patterns. And the fifth area for a company on a big picture, liquidity will be a very big issue, because obviously there will be a sales falls. Companies like FMCG, food and beverage industry, I can tell you that on an average, they have a almost 50 to 60 to 70% sales fall. So in next 3 months, we will end the quarter. So we need to focus on project how we can make our supply chain efficient and reduce our cost, so that we must make sure that our cash inflow does not really have a negative impact to the bottom line of the company, or it becomes a question just to survive for a company. We need to focus on many areas. Particularly, I will focus on inventory optimization due to the consumer behavior purchasing shift. A lot of inventory will be idle in terms of raw material, work in progress, and finished goods. I can talk about my company. We will have almost 113% of more inventory in comparison to last year, accounts closing 30th March. So now at this point of time, companies like food, beverage industry, that summer is the time when you can sell ice cream, you can sell the beverage. So these are the areas that we need to really adjust. Increasing visibility is very important in terms of your supply side, manufacturing, and your distribution side. Local companies, in many ways, they did not take in proper care, unlike multinational company. Customs clearance is going to be a very big issue, very big challenges, and channel distribution. So people who will be, having a very strong coverage on channel distribution, I think they will only survive. And we need to have a complete end-to-end supply chain resilience, that is risk management plan. I'm sure that multinational companies have focused these areas, but companies like local companies, now local companies are playing a significant role in the GDP of Bangladesh as well as in other countries. So in the assessing global risk, many new terminologies are coming up, like terrorism. So before 9/11, terrorism was not a big deal, but now it is also a big deal. Health, pandemic, global originality, supply originality, economic recession, bankruptcy, it will be a very big issue. There will be a lot of banks which will not be able to, pay your money. Enterprises risk is also a very big issue. Human capital and management risk are to be considered on a priority basis. Supplier selection and reducing the risk in terms of the geography. And finally, and most importantly, we should focus on community and society, that is the external stakeholders. Because, as a company, maybe our first priority may be sales and the bottom line. But at the end of the day, if the community doesn't survive, if my stakeholders like my distributor, my wholesaler, my retailer, they don't survive, we will not survive. If our customers don't survive, we will not survive. So we need to think very seriously on that. If I go a little bit about the global scholars, what really they are thinking, a lot of journals are coming up. I was browsing a lot of articles. Let's see the global supply chain guru, Mr. Sunil Chopra, the professor of Northwest University. What does he say? He says, with the entire populations isolating and quarantining, companies are seeing demand spike for certain items and plummet for others, while their access to parts and labor from around the world is being severely disrupted. Weather-related supply disruptions have been much more common over the last 20-25 years. But Sunil Chopra added, but this is the first time I have really seen a supply disruption risk due to people not being able to go to work. This is a new dimension for us. Professor Richard is considered the supply chain guru from Cranfield University. He mentions that we need to focus procurement function based on resilience rather than cost. We need to analyze if companies, they really need to buy products from the farthest corners of the world. If a company can work out a way to make its supply chain more resilient, but does so using more automation and fewer people. These are the areas. Then Mr. Tom Derry, what does he say? He says companies are going to face new reality, which is that we cannot make supply chain decisions based on purely on economics. Enterprises need to factor a variety of disruptions, including geopolitical events, weather, health problems, and terrorism acts. From our Bangladesh, the research consultants from Light Castle Partners, what they are projecting, Bangladesh industry is not equipped to meet the unnatural growth of temporary demand spike. Raw material sourcing will be very challenging, particularly most manufacturers, leading to shortage of products and a potential surge in pricing. Most FMCG companies are using third-party distributors with sales representing, distributing the end product to retail outlets, that is stores. Companies are yet to curtail their distribution field force in order to limit the spread of the virus. Most companies are still operating in full distribution mode, potentially endangering lives through local transmission. In the long run, this industry will remain turbulent, but not dead if certain interventions are taken as preventive measures. The major FMCG companies also need to start planning for a long-term perspective. Now, if I tell you the Bangladeshi context, what is exactly happening for a Bangladeshi companies, irrespective of local or multinational? Bangladesh is heavily dependent on export, and at this moment, our total export volume is $264.38 billion, against we import around $400 billion. And our first source of earning is the remittance, where 10 million our brothers, Bangladeshi brothers, are working overseas. The Gulf countries, Western countries, and South Asia, they are almost back. And that is going to heavily hit the economy. The second earning source is ready-made garment sector. Ready-made garment sector contributes almost 13% of our GDP. And 4 million workers are working in this industry, and almost what we hear that 1 million people are unemployed. And if you see that, what is our major import? Raw sugar, pulse, wheat, ginger, onion, refinery oil. you know that most of the time, if you just go, you will see that the prices has gone up because the freight price is high, and you will not get the on-time availability of the freights. The duration and the lead time of the customs clearance will be huge because the port demurrage will be high. I can tell you at this moment in Chittagong, we have the capacity of 39,020 feet containers of capacity, and it is 100% full. And at this moment, as I'm talking, almost 11 vessels are already in the jetty waiting for custom clearance, and 30 container another vessels is waiting outside the anchorage. And already the government, our Honorable Prime Minister, has declared $8 billion as a stimulus package, which is equivalent to 2.52 billion. So if we think as a macro impact, it will be huge. I can tell you, I worked in this 4 industry. Let me go a little bit. The dairy industry, Aki's Food and Beverage, is one of the largest in the subcontinent. Per day, we have a milk collection capacity of 150,000 liters of milk. And at this moment, we have a collection of less than 20,000. And what is going to happen? The hundreds and millions of gallons of milk, the farmers are, that they're throwing it out. There is no way, because this lockdown situation, and ultimately who is going to be the sufferer? The farmers. So it is going to be such a viral, long-lasting effect. They will eventually be out of the business. Poultry industry and the feed industry. It is almost around 30,000 crore industry, where Kazi Farm, it is around $450 million operation. And March to June, you need to buy the local maize as well as import the local maize, because you need, from the maize, you need to convert to feed, that you can feed to the birds. And this industry is a 365 days of operation. So if you cannot import vaccines, medicines, and if you cannot purchase and store maize at this moment, then you will not be able to convert it to feed, animal feed, and you cannot feed to the birds, and eventually the birds will die. So we will have an impact in terms of nutrition item like chicken, and there's a source of protein, chicken and egg. The whole micro and macro industry will be affected. Electronic industry, I can tell you, companies like LG, Samsung, all other local companies, they are mainly seasonal business, like Eid al-Azha and Eid al-Fitr are the 2 festivals, and 60% revenue comes from this refrigerator industry. So what is going to happen from January and November, December, it was, more or less in Bangladesh, it was very cold, so they could not sell the air conditioners. So from January, refrigerator starts pick up. So the whole season, if these things continue, I can tell you these companies will go bankrupt. Food industry, I can tell you my company like Mojo, Aki's, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, if these things continue, it will be very difficult. Companies like multinational, they go by the bank loans, and it will be very difficult to pay back their loan. What is the real impact? I can tell you in my company, the cost of goods sold has gone up because of the freight prices, because of the fluctuation of the manufacturing side. Inventory has jumped and shoot like anything, almost 130 to 140%. It is going to have a very, very bad impact in the cash flow and liquidity. Purchasing capacity of your consumers is going to shrink, I'm sure, irrespective of any industry. There will be chances that a lot of big companies, they will already, they will lay off the employees, like, the Lafarge Bangladesh Limited, they have already declared they will lay off employees. Port congestion, it's not like that you bring in, but it will take at least 1 month to 1.5 months at this moment. And suppliers and supply. I was talking to my supplier in Singapore today, and he said that they don't know whether they will be able to ship. And dependency on the China, that is again another challenge, because it is not going to be that easy to shift instantly from China to other parts of the world. And shipping line unavailability, that will be a big challenge. And dear audience, thank you very much. My presentation is not that big because we have other presenters. And thank you very much for your patience hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Very nicely briefed about all the industries mostly covered, and very informative, because we are seeing that the customer demand has been shifting from luxury to basic needs, from beauty care to healthcare. So we have to be the players, we have to be the industry, we have the supply chain professional, have to look after these things, the demand changing. The other end, just rightly point out about the global factory, I mean the China. China was the only source of the most of the countries. So we need to get rid of the source dependency of the China. So rightly said, Mr. Saleheen, thank you. And our second speaker is, I'd like to offer Mr. Charlie. Hello, Charlie, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you
Okay,
very
Charlie.
much.
Now it's your turn. So you have to introduce yourself and go through the presentation, please. And the dear participant, if you have any question, please raise the question and answer icons. So to whom you want to ask the question, please mention about these things. Charlie, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much for this opportunity. Next slide, please. So the presentation that I'm going to give to you is how we in PASIA, and particularly in Philippines and in Southeast Asia, are doing in terms of responding to the COVID-19. Next, please. I divided my presentation on 4 quick areas. I wanted to give you an introduction of where I'm coming from, but the background of this COVID-19 and how we're actually responding it, both from a national side and to the business sector. Then I'll wrap up with a quick summary. Next, please. Next, please. So a little bit of my background, so you would understand where I'm coming from. So just like everybody probably on the participants, I'm also coming from the supply chain practice. So I did work with a lot of companies, and these are the companies. I turned to become an entrepreneur and have worked with several logistics organizations, also including software companies like Ariba. Next, please. So the organization that I represent is PASIA and PASIA Shared Services. We are basically an institute and a solutions and services company in the area of supply chain, procurement, and logistics. We provide 4 areas, which is basically consulting, helping companies, training them, providing them the services, and implementing technology that they need on these 3 areas. Next, please. So if you look at the menu of services and the solutions that we provide, we really go end to end. You know, we've learned it from our practice in some of the companies. So we bring the expertise to both countries, governments, and private organizations as well. I'm not going to go through all of the details for the lack of time, but it gives you a semblance of what we actually provide our constituents and our customers. Next, please. Our mission is very simple. You know, we want to empower our people such that they are our greatest asset. But key important thing here is ethics and how we actually operate things, excellence on these 3 areas, and to implement technology. Last November, we changed our corporate goal. Our corporate goal before was to make a lot of money, but sometime last year, you know, we decided to change it, and we thought that everything that we do was to actually honor the ultimate, you know, supply chain leader of all, which is our God, and to be able to dedicate all of our efforts to His greater glory. So that's the type of vision. Our vision for the company is to become the most exciting and the most rewarding place to be. Next, please. So let me go through a little bit of a quick background. Before COVID-19, we saw many economic risks and challenges. We saw infrastructure gaps. We saw increased intensity and frequency of natural hazards. If you will remember, sometime a month before COVID-19, as an example, the Philippines had a big volcano eruption that created a big disruption that is brought about by a natural disaster. We saw that there was an economic slowdown going in, and there was a lot of geopolitical tensions between the US and Iran. You know, the shooting of the Iranian general and all of those crazy things that's actually happened was triggering several things, including higher tariff barriers between US and its trading partners, especially China, was very much visible in the economic and world view of things. So it was very depressing when we actually found out that the COVID-19 was a really serious stuff that actually happened. So this was announced last December, and I came into a lot of TV and social media that supply chains has to prepare since January, and come February and March, where we actually came and made several pronouncements. as we were expecting things to really get into this particular pandemic situation. Next, please. So let's take a quick look on the pandemic COVID-19. The key concern now is health risk. So everybody right now have a lot of time to listen to webinar at their own confines of their houses. But the productivity worldwide is really down. Social distancing, there is no classes here. Even though you're rich or you're poor, you're facing the same problem. So even if you have a lot of money, but if you don't have the item to buy, then you can't actually spend your money as well. So the workforce, as presented to you, is so much challenged because people cannot go to work. People are looking at lockdowns or releasing the lockdowns. So a lot of supply chains are being disrupted. And it's not only companies, it's nations and actually several tiers in the supply chain echelon. And what we have seen in the US is very alarming. There's a lot of job losses that's actually moving in. My personal take is like we are going to go into multi-recession stages to a point that depression is just around the corner if we don't really get a chance to really address this, or we're not able to find a vaccine. So the situation now is really very serious, especially on food and medical. And there are several areas where the demand for this item has greatly increased. So all of the countries are competing for the same item that they need for their nations. Next, please. As supply chain professionals, we always look at risk. And I always say that first and foremost, we should take a look at our internal risks, things that we have more control into, equipment malfunction, high transportation costs. These are things that we can actually still manage. But it becomes more difficult when we get to see some external risks, things that we don't really get to handle and within our control. But more so when there are macro risks, that are really below our management and ability to actually control. But more so when we can actually see that epidemic happens, But this thing is not only epidemic because it actually happens to many locations, which is now called a major pandemic that's actually happening to our world right now. So we are facing with risks, which many organizations and nations are trying to address too. Next, please. So what are the effects of this in the supply chain? Longer than average lead times, as an example. Manufacturers are operating at least half, and many of the companies in the Philippines are operating in 20 to 30% capacity. Those that are very much dependent on lean and just in time were the ones that were first affected, simply because, your hand-to-mouth inventory is working against you. And it's not only suppliers that are being looked into here. When you look at burgers, or chicken, chicken is dependent on feeds. The vitamins and all of the chemicals, antibiotics that actually gets into it are also disrupted. So more and more companies are really getting into the effects of the supply chain disruption on different layers of their supplier echelons. And consumer behavior is changing very fast right now. We are watching consumer behavior because of panic buying, because of demand preferences. There are industries that are totally going to get busted because there's no more customers. And some of them will really lose any more customers, even if the pandemic comes into a normalization. The whole world has really changed so much already. And the lockdowns are continuing, and curfew scenarios and all of these things are happening. So we have to see a lot of changes as to what are the essential items and what are actually the non-essential commodities. That is going to be more, managed by the consumer behavior. Next, please. Let's take a quick look at the Asia Pacific coronavirus ranking. I think this is very important to show because we're not ashamed, that even the Philippines is one of the poorest country that is addressing the coronavirus safety ranking. So when we saw this, we were so concerned. So a lot of people are challenging the numbers, how accurate these numbers are. But even if the numbers are really not so accurate, I think we can still feel our level of execution quite poor from the different countries that we already seen that is actually ahead in making good strides in addressing the pandemic. Next, please. And it's also very important to note that any country's ability to address pandemic situations that affects their logistics is also correlated on how their LPI or Logistics Performance Index. So Logistics Performance Index is an index being done to assure or to guide how are the companies or how are the countries actually performing as compared to other countries in terms of their logistics performance. So in the Philippines, we are monitoring this very closely. So we are around this particular path, you know, and the cost of doing logistics is also very expensive, even for a country like the Philippines. So this is a big correlation on how we're able to execute and respond to the logistics challenges on a pandemic. Next, please. And even in countries like Bangladesh, you know, you guys have a lot of challenges also. We were researching this before we actually came into the play, but we got so concerned when the Bangladesh logistics performance overall ranking is around one of those 100 countries. And it seems like there was a good deterioration from 2016 to 2018. So there has to be some level of improvement that we should be actually be seeing this as we actually try to address, because most of the difficulties on these lockdowns, you know, this pandemic, you know, normally the behavior of the government is to take control, militarization, and, you know, making sure that the checkpoints are pretty much put in place. But this is creating a lot of havoc, you know, in terms of making sure that you manage the free flow of goods, especially for the essential items. Next, please. So how do we look at it from an institute and from a solutions provider? Our goal now is not about just, you know, delivering trainings or delivering services. We said that if we are going to become relevant to our constituents, this is the best time for supply chain professionals to really get out of their comfort zones. Even for us, we lost a lot of revenue because many of our revenue also comes from face-to-face training. So when this all got disappearing, immediately we saw that our priorities will have to change. So our priority now as an institute and a service provider is three things. One, to save lives of people, to maintain peace and order. Why do I say peace and order? Because when there is no food on the table, you know, citizens of the country will run, you know, into doing crazy things to the extent of killing people or doing robbery. So there's going to be unrest to a point that the government are flagging martial law as a way to actually control it. And if there is no good supply chain, especially for SMEs, the SMEs will not be able to support the bigger companies. So the bigger companies will not be able to perform the basic services or the basic utilities that is needed by the nation. So our scoreboard or our KPI is how many lives did we save, how many peace and order situations have we controlled, and how many industries have we actually continuously sustained so that they could still operate. And how does a supply chain organization and a solution provider do it? Next, please. So there are a lot of challenges. I myself is working partly with the government while I'm trying to run my company, when I'm also helping the business sector also. There are a lot of things that we saw. There is no leadership. People are untrained. If they're not even trained to do their normal supply chain, how much more they could actually support a national pandemic situation. Everybody is doing their own thing. The food companies are doing several things on their own, but the government is also doing things on their own. There's no integration. Everybody's operating in silo. When you take a look on how things are being orchestrated by the country, you'll see that there's no best practice. You know, they think that the answer to any war, because COVID-19 is a war, they think that in order to win the war is to take care of logistics. But we all know, as supply chain professional, logistics is just a part and parcel of the supply chain. It has to be an integrated process to be able to ensure proper execution. So organizations, countries, and governments are not too used in enhancing their supply chains. So much more in a situation like this. The enablers, you know, there's no even sufficient information as to how many hospitals, how many test kits, how many PPEs should be available, and what is the demand And how do you actually unblock the supply chain and logistics to make it affordable and available to them? A lot of corruption is also happening in many countries as we speak right now, because the use of money is very fluid, because they take the reason that everything has to be done on a urgent and emergency situation. So controls are quite loose at the moment. Next, please. So let me share with you what we're doing. We have a choice. It's good to stay at home and do nothing. It's very bad to see that there's no revenue coming in and some of the contracts are being suspended. Or we try to do something out of our own respective houses, work at home and empower a team of 60 people to be able to support, whatever areas that we can actually support. So we are trying to make sure that the people are available. We recommend, and we do a lot of webinars, and we have to reach out to major industry associations. We need to tell them that there are a lot of things that they can do. And the planning, for example, for rice or the planning for food, people are saying that we have enough food, but they didn't tell you that there's only enough food for the next 3 months. We all know that this pandemic is not going to be done in the next 3 months. So the real question is like, what will happen from 3 months onwards? We need to have a level of process preparation wherein we have to see a time frame of different quarters, including a span of at least 24 months. We have to look at the supplier risk across different boundaries of supplier levels. And we have to make sure that we optimize logistics network. Logistics network has to be empowered, because there are a lot of options. But if not properly orchestrated, they will remain dormant logistics capability or capacity. They have to be enabled to actually get to move it. And some level of technology is also going to help in making it available. Can you imagine that when we were buying PPEs, the government was actually saying that they were buying it for 1,800 pesos. But we all know that the cost of this PPE is only 600 pesos. So there was 3 times the price shift of those types of things. So we see that there are some, parties that were profiteering in some areas where it actually did not have supposed to happen. Next, please. So we're now walking. Maybe when things are over, you will be surprised that we are not going to become business as usual. We are now going to walk into a totally different environment. As an example, and this is not only the whole stretch of this, I think we will see that many suppliers are going to be considered outside of China. There is a lot of tension going in right now, and you probably have seen everything, but there is a lot of commotion and disagreements on where to source their current materials. Some of these suppliers are dead already; they're out of business already. For SMEs, their ability to sustain is only 1 to 3 months, and after that, if there's no business, they're gonna fold up. They're going to make sure that countries are going to manufacture their own food and medical supplies. They're going to rationalize and look for expanding their supply chain networks. They're going to look at who can actually do it. The problem with companies is like they don't have very seasoned, trained, and certified and experienced people who can actually execute the new supply chain normal. And at the same time, companies will have to be more open to getting expertise that is not available in their own companies. Even nations need expertise coming from the private sector, because this is not normally available in government, and this is not available in many organizations as well. So the thing that we actually see going to move fast is the use of automation. There's going to be a lot of digitization. I think the rise of electronic supply chain and procurement marketplaces is going to rise. Artificial intelligence will be widely used in automating their supply chain processes. These are just some of it, but it provides a quick window of things that's going to change and happen very fast. This is not by choice, but they are pressured and forced and hard-pressed to immediately implement this. Next, please. So what are we doing? There are a lot of things that ASEA is actually doing. We have a program which we call National Pandemic Supply Chain Augmentation Plan. And I'm going to handle this as we actually move along. So we have 9 initiatives, all being fired up all at the same time. And we're getting a lot of traction and accomplishments and results by putting this all together. This was already available. We have just elevated and enhanced it to meet the COVID-19 situation. Next, please. So the training has now been changed. There is nobody who wants to attend classroom training anymore. So what we did was to actually put in place online instructor-led trainings. You know, even trainings like with Apex, we are now devising it into getting the best consultants out of places like Canada. You know, we've got a very good trainer there by the name of Kyle Silverstein. You know, so we try to make him available to train across different geographies. This guy is able to provide the knowledge and the expertise from his home-based location in Canada. And we provide it as an online instructor-led. So the instructor is still there, but this is facilitated by a expert consultant and a trainer. Next, please. So we also provide a fully automated online training and certification. We have certification for supply chain planning, procurement, and logistics. I'll give you an example. When you talk about supply chain or procurement, we don't just tell you and teach about procurement. Procurement are needed in the last 20 years. What we teach is what we call category management or strategic sourcing, which is more important than just understanding procurement. So this is an automated, interactive, you know, it has a lot of checkpoints. You will never go to sleep, but we teach organizations and professionals as to strategic sourcing process, SRM, and the entire breadth of training programs. And it could be made available for you for 1 year time. So this is very automated, and this leads you to the certification program. And after taking a lot of these courses, you can take your online examination. Next, please. So it's not only about supply chain courses. We have a lot of time now to reinforce ourselves. So we teach organizations about leadership, digital skills program, project management, business management skills, and all of the things that is actually necessary after getting out or addressing the COVID-19. Next, please. So these are soft skills. A lot of companies right now are looking for suppliers. So we provide this as a service to companies who are looking for specific items, from alcohol to PPEs to raw materials to soda ash. Everything is now being needed by companies just to survive and complete their supply lines. So this is basically a sourcing service that we help companies to gain who are the suppliers and what's the situation on the market. So we provide them intelligence reports. Next, please. So very important that you have to assess your suppliers. There is a big bloodbath going on. Many of the suppliers don't have any financial capacity anymore to sustain your business. So companies want to analyze who they are, what's their position, how can they help. So assessing suppliers is going to be much more needed. And we also provide it into the same platform of what we call GPAS, Global Platform for Assessing Suppliers. So this is basically supplier assessment that is outsourced for us to do in behalf of a particular buying company. The buying company doesn't pay anything, but the supplier pays something like $100 to $200 to get themselves completed out and further assess. Next, please. So how are we doing this? How are we helping the government? We are helping the government by coaching them that there has to be a supply chain leader in the country. The problem of COVID-19 is all about supply chain. That's why we become so important nowadays. But the problem, there is no one in the country that is tasked or empowered to lead the country or their respective organizations. So what we're saying here is like we need to work closely with the business sector to be able to demonstrate capacity and capability to execute things. Then the government could actually tap into that expertise. We believe that there are 3 ways of attacking the program. We need to teach government and companies to do integrated supply chain planning. We need to teach them how to do strategic procurement. What do you mean by strategic procurements? Like If PEs are not available, then get into cottage industry to do PPEs so that they can actually internally manufacture their own need. Optimizing logistics network. There's a lot of problems right now in port congestion. You know, only logistics professionals could really understand how to actually unblock the supply chain. We are looking at putting in big ships near the port because the port is already congested, and these ships will house cold storage or cold chain reefers because there's a lot of food stuck on the port but cannot get out of the port. So this is the type of experience and leadership that we're putting in, and the government seems to be very appreciative of the insights that we provide them. Next, please. So our approach is to pioneer this with the business sector, work closely with all of the different major players in the business sector, and allow gradually the government to tap into this best approach or into this best practices. Next, please. So the ability right now of many organizations, like for example, we're putting together all of the hospitals. The problem that we saw in hospitals was that a lot of hospitals had a lot of supplies, test kits, PPEs, food, bed, blankets, but they don't need it anyway. So a lot of hospitals and a lot of people were dying because they didn't have the right medical supplies. So we have put in place an electronic procurement and supply chain marketplace for them to share, buy together, and everybody becomes happy and they're assured of the supplies. And we want to bring this to other countries also as we enhance the execution of this electronic procurement marketplace. So it's very transparent also. So everybody is encouraged and they're happy to see that the prices are transparent and everybody benefit from this. The enemy is not each other hospital. The enemy is the virus, you know. So their attention right now is really trying to save lives because there's really no competition within hospitals in many places that we have seen so far. Next, please. So we work closely. So what we did is there is an association in our country called MAP, Management Association of the Philippines. There is 1,000 CEOs. This is the Association of CEOs. So we signed a collaboration with them. And we're going to bring in a lot of programs, webinars, advocacy, endorsement to governments, and even, you know, creating these electronic marketplaces to help industries to move forward using digitalization and best practices for the country in the supply chain execution. So this is a very exciting collaboration of CEOs and supply chain practitioners. Next, please. So we also bring in a think tank. We cannot do it ourselves. So we tap people from around the globe who are real experts to give us insights. You know, so we've got people from different places and they provide us, you know. Say, for example, we have one person coming as a retired senior vice president of global supply chain of one of the biggest nutritional companies in the world, the biggest. So he happens to be available and he's retired, so he's providing a lot of insights for us. And we've got good trainers and consultants too, you know, as I've said, that is actually providing this, giving me advice so that I can lead and execute this to a lot of beneficiaries of supply chain transformation. Next, please. So we are calling for volunteers. We are making sure that we've got enough people who are able to help different industries. When we talk about agri-food, we have people from Nestle, we have people from, you know, Unilever, who could provide good insights on how to maneuver on very difficult supply situations. So we actually have the think tank, which are very much senior leadership people, and we have the supply chain professionals ready to move in when we actually need their help. And they are providing a lot of good value and insights to us as well. Next, please. So we go into a lot of media presence. And, you know, since January, we have a lot of sharing that we already did, that this is going to happen. And everything that we said in January all happened. It's already happening right now. So we got into a lot of TV presentations, and this thing is still happening right now. And I still receive a lot of invitation from different countries to really give them a good, flavor of what we're doing and to espouse the consolidation of supply chains to be leveling up in its presence. Next, please. So we have a lot of upcoming, and this is what you have for you as well. So we try to really participate in many of the webinars when it comes to supply chain. Everybody now wants to talk about supply chain. This is the time that we can actually really take this opportunity to make sure that we really articulate the value proposition of supply chain management. Next, please. So it's very daunting work for us. There are several challenges that we are facing. So we are actually making sure that we continuously create a motto that we will never give up. This is our advocacy. We want to make sure that we are going to go into a weekly webinar session, and we would like to have you on board with that as well, if you could join us. These are free webinars that we actually are doing on a weekly basis. So the next one will be on next Friday on April 30, just to make a plug into it. Next, please. So what are the upcoming? I think we want to focus on how hospitals are operating, how the food is actually going to be assured, and how other industries are facing difficulties on the supply chain and what they should actually be doing. So we are going to invite personalities not only from our own country, but from the region and from a global standpoint. So everybody is welcome, and we will list them up, get to arrange a few things with them, and we're gonna make them available through our webinars. Next, please. Lastly, before I close, in November, when we crafted our new mission and vision, it has become a practice in our company that we should actually always pray. And we pray for all of the risks that we are actually facing as a company and as an institute. And this has made us so strong, even though we're facing a lot of difficulties. So every week we pray as a company, just like doing a Zoom meeting. And we actually provide some lessons. And these are the lessons that we teach our employees: dependability, reliability, loyalty, commitment, and down the line. So we have courses. Our format is to actually have a 1.5 hour, an hour or so, praise and adoration, sharing of the gratitude that we have received, learning that we have to be grateful for all of the blessings that we receive. And we prepare, we pray and we prepare as a team so that we can actually surpass if we are going to survive, especially now that there is a pandemic that we cannot control. We always think that the greatest supply chain leader is the God that is ahead of us. Next, please. So in summary, all I can say is like COVID-19, has changed the whole world. And particularly it has brought supply chain realization that it is the most important function in any nation, in any organization. But the new supply chain needs to be agile right now. We have to be open, to be disrupted, and to make sure that we move into the right direction. And we're doing our own part here. I know that a lot of people are doing their own part, but we are receiving a lot of offers from big companies who wants to help us in our advocacy in the things that we're actually doing. We have to collaborate, and even with SAS, I'm very happy that you have actually invited me here, because at the end of the day, we are all on this together. There's no boundaries anymore. If the pandemic hits you, somebody has to help you. And as long as we say, we should never give up. And I think we can actually surpass. And I'm very optimistic that, given the right execution and the urgency and timing of the implementation of these best practices, if done properly and on time, I think we could really overcome all of the difficulties that we're facing right now. Because if we do supply chain, I think we will be able to help our families as well survive this pandemic. Next, please. So all I can say is thank you very much, and we hope to continuously work with SAS. We will never give up. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie, for your very insightful presentation and timely deliberation. So nowadays, business are battling with the figure out the response to the COVID pandemic, amid the scarcity of economic turmoil. And you've been rightly pointed out about the integrated supply chain optimize the logistics, strategic procurement, and so on. Thank you, sir, for a nice presentation. And our next and final presenter is Mr. Atiqul Islam. He is our founder, joint secretary. So I am giving the floor to the Mr. Atiq. Atiq bhai, please now is your time. Please go ahead.
Okay, okay. Can you hear me? And I'm audible and visible?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you. First of all, definitely I should be proud to be part of this session because I think I already mentioned, Rashid Bhai already mentioned, I'm actually founder member of this organization, and also I would say I'm also the first life member of this organization as well, as far as I can recall. So having said that, I'm really, really proud and grateful to the organizers and see all the lovely face. Before I start, I should ask Rashid Bhai how long I should optimize. I know.
So 15, 20 minutes.
Okay, okay, let me share my screen because it's important. I know this time is extremely important just before the Ramadan for family.
Yes.
Tell me if you can see my screen.
Shubha, can you handle it? We're not seeing. Yeah. Now the serious screen.
You can see my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, just to the presentation mode. Yeah.
Awesome. Excellent. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Excellent. No more introduction because you all know, after all, time is very important. And let me disable my video so that I get the full traction of all of you for my presentation. So definitely, I think Saleheen Bhai and Charlie already mentioned that we are passing through an extremely, extremely important and critical moment in our lifetime. It may pop up once in a few centuries. You never know. So question around, uncertainties around, because we are passing through a behavioral change process. A new world would be our normal world. We are going to see a new norm, definitely. So having said that, let me just see why it's not pressing. Is it moving? Okay, okay. I will zoom in few things. From my experience, you know, I had been in telecom industry last 15 years, more than 15 years. And before that, I was in manufacturing paint industry in Bangladesh. I'll also have a couple of, and I started my career in a bank. So basically, I'll zoom in the telecom industry and the global impact, supply chain, supply and logistics impact. And first, definitely, I'll try to explain why this pandemic is so, I mean, unique. And because it's even before more than pandemic. If there is any term we could use more than pandemic, this is the time we could use, because we have seen Great Depression, we have seen the Black Swan, we have seen the Great Recessions, everything we have seen. But this is something is way deeper than anything before. So that's what I'll try to zoom in, and I'll give you the quick business impact, the global business impact, because the topics today is global business. And of course, I'll zoom in the supply and logistics sector, because our lovely sector, which has been talked much, which has been the critical across the whole world nowadays. Telecom industry concern from North America and global context, and what industries we see the booming trend. And the most important, I would say, this is extremely important, how you should respond to these unprecedented situations when we have all the uncertainties around knocking at the door, and what would be the immediate actions and long-term enablers. So eventually the reflection, takeaways, and question and answer. Let's see how fast I can give up. Okay. This is the slide I was thinking before when I was actually creating this deck, few things you can actually list down hundred of this type of unusual. We have never seen these actually. The global car companies, this is only few. The global car companies are producing health materials, I mean the ventilators. And the sports ground, lovely sports ground, the world, even the, the top, the Maracanã stadiums in Brazil. So those type of stuffs is turning to a hospital, as I said. And also we see the hotels, five-star chain hotels are actually turning to hospital. Never ever seen, even we imagined before. And if you see the global top brewing company and perfume company coming to bottling the sanitization, and this is the time demand. And there is a, if you follow, definitely you're gonna follow the global news channel, and you see the trade battle for N95 mask by Trump and German and Canada, and for the PPE, how it's so aggressive. An interesting picture you see on the bottom. I don't know if I'm showing my cursor here, but I don't know if you can follow. So passenger cabin, it's a Lufthansa, I think. It's Airbus 330. The whole passenger cabin is packed with the equipments and the cargo stuffs. So, and this is the time each and every country, every industry, every company, every people get impacted. And one of the crucial impact, basically, the immigration and border restriction across the whole world, never had before. And we got a very nice term, social distancing. Unfortunately, this is very unsocial term. We are getting used to each and every alternate minutes. And days starts with the breaking news like shutdown, lockdown, and state of emergency, and we ends the day with the number of death counting. So very, very unfortunate situation nowadays. Okay, let me go to the next slide. Why this pandemic is different than others? We had, as I said, we had few things before. We had the outbreak before. We have seen many hiccup in the industry across the globe. Just because I tried to point out few things. The current global ecosystem, business ecosystem, is very complex than ever before. And this small, tiny, unseen culprit virus is way faster and smarter than any other virus we had been before. Just in 30 to 40 days, it captured the whole more than 190 countries. And interestingly, the way it struck, all the big economic players get impacted first, so fast. And if you see that the G8 countries, and I mean the later on, of course, the G20s and now the planet. So all those G20 countries is basically having 87% world GDP, and this virus target those countries first. Interesting, very coincident. I would say very unfortunate coincidence. And we see the deeper impact for these Great Depression. We have seen the Second World War after a post-Second World War depression. We have seen, as I said, the Black Swan, like 9/11. We have seen the 2008, 9, 10 global depressions. But this is way, way deeper than those. And this virus actually demanding a nice transformation from globalization. People are trying to get rid of globalization concept. Remember, we started globalization hive, I think in early 80s, and somewhere after the recession in 2008, early 2000, then the world has actually realizing, no, we need to start screening our trade. Then people are talking about Brexit, NATO, leaving the NATO, US is trying to leaving the NATO, and all these stuffs. And the companies and the global organization, global nations, they are trying to region-centric alliance. So this is another indication this virus is giving us. I'm moving my slide if you can follow me. Okay, this corona is curving the world. The data talks. This, if my left hand side, this is the world community people movement. Interestingly, you will see live and this database from Google community movement. If you can see, it's always updating. It gives the indication people where people are moving now, because Google has all the record, because we are wherever I take my cell phone, Google can track, okay, you're going to maybe Walmart or Costco or somewhere else. So you see that's more than everywhere you see a sharp decline. The people, these are all outdoor activities, outdoor stops, retail, recreation, drastically, and transit stations, grocery, pharmacy reduced, workplace reduced, parks. So this is, I think, 1 week back. So definitely it's climbing more. And with this mobility, it's actually having a big impact to the economic growth projections. And this is the IMF projection. So they say it's the worldwide, we might have -3% GDP fall. And you see the small button is showing the emerging and developing Asia, so including Southeast Asia. But Southeast Asia, we have big countries like Indonesia, India, and they are actually Vietnam. They are contributing as well. So, but the global as a world, you see a drastic down. Do you remember in 2008? After 2008, what was the decline percentage? It was like 1.8 to 2% global. So it's almost double so far, but you don't know what happened next 3, 4, 6 months. Very uncertain. Okay. Let me pick few industries. Those are now greatly impacted. My fellow panelists, they actually explained, they mentioned some of them, but of course, I'm just trying to give you some glimpse of this. So aviation industry is high impacted. Is tourism, hotel, sports, outdoor activities, music, movie theater, exhibition, dining restaurants, fashion outlets. Actually, if there is a statistics, recent statistics, 83% of the sales decline in North America for all the fashion outlets. And the energy, we have seen from previous panels that the gas and oil industry is struggling to survive. And for Bangladesh, of course, the country like Bangladesh who are depending on remittance is greatly impacted. Automobiles. There are few industries actually will have less impact, or maybe quick impact, but in the long run, they will come back. Like the financial sectors. Of course, we need financial sectors anyway. Education sectors, we need educations. Regardless the ways of communication, ways of learning, but we need it. IT technology, it would be definitely booming up. Communication, telecom, food, consumables, there's currently you see the moderate or sharp decline, maybe the consumables and food, but people need these, human need these. We cannot get rid of. Maybe the pattern will change, our behavioral pattern, consumption pattern will change, but we need this. And there are a few other things. So quick facts, of course, SMEs are greatly impacted, those who are contributing 54% of the GDP. And if you see few small statistics like 650 million passenger trip cancellations so far across, as per the ATA, International Airlines Trade Associations. Huge falls. And you see the job loss, 6 million job loss in hotel industry so far. So let me quickly go through all. Yeah. And how the supply and logistics industry is getting impacted. I of course, as I said, it's a process. We are actually running through a change process. We don't know the destination where it would be ending up. So, but as of now, the way we see, this is the glimpse from the industry. The ocean freight demand supply has been collapsed. Ocean demand and supply has been collapsed drastically, and the order has been cancelled and the port has been locked down. Workforce has been removed. You see the jam in the jetty area, and there are a lot of instances that the air cargo demand has been slumped due to those exercise. 30% of their capacity has been impacted so far. And cross-surface transport is also another area. Just for an example, US-Canada border has been closed. It's been 40 days, and only, you can't imagine, there are 2 billion trade USD, 2 billion USD trade each day among between US and Canada border. But 69% has been impacted because they are running the essential business. Two examples, small examples, but some indicative messages for us. I think one of my colleagues mentioned that there are milk wasting. 3.7 million gallons milk is wasting each day, and in US, as per the US statistics. And this example I brought up because this is small, tiny business we never thought, but it gives the indication how severe this impact. 30 crore flowers were wasted for Bangla New Year program lockdown. The market size is 1200 crore BDT in Bangladesh. So this is, and 2 lakh people are involved with this. So this is just a takeaway, small takeaway. Let me zoom in the telecom industry because you know, I'm in telecom industry, so of course I can't avoid this impact anyway. So it's my bread and butter. So you see, you probably know, you probably think that telecom is getting bumpy and bumpy. It's coming up with, yes, but the immediate impact is not so good. And there would be some sign, Julie. So of course, the industry traffic has increased 20% to 100%, but if you see, it's mostly residential network and mostly driving from Wi-Fi. I'm staying more than 40 days inside my home. Hardly I can remember how long I open up my telecom network rather than using my Wi-Fi, home Wi-Fi. And this is how it's being impacted. And there is a huge voice call impact as well. So 5G investment, the one we are dreaming for, because the future technology lying hugely on this 5G, the pattern. So it will be impacted because due to the financial crisis, the capex issues. And there, it's small statistics like 25 billion USD roaming revenue loss. You remember, I show you the mobility statistics. 25 billion roaming revenue for telecom operators. Currently, we see the spike in the rural areas. It's obvious. And telecom component supply impact. One of my colleagues mentioned that China is the world factory for global component. It's our components across the whole world, 20% components, roughly 20% components are coming from China. So that's how it's getting impacted, the telecom. So, okay, this is statistics, or I would say survey result from PwC. I picked up from their site. The top concern, I think it's not only for telecom, eventually is more or less for every industry sector. Financial impact, including the operation, future periods, and liquidity crisis. Potential global recessions, definitely. Workforce reduction in productivity. Consumer confidence and reducing the confidence. Supply chain disruption, you see, this is a survey, global survey, but it's supply chain is coming up. People, as I said, the whole world, the global leaders has realized the supply chain's importance nowadays. Fortunately or unfortunately, but with these shaking. Okay, and there are a few others, of course, as risk and other things. The last but not the least, you see the impact on tax and trade barriers and immigration. It would be another challenge once we come up from this pandemic. Okay, how maybe I'm almost end to this session, but I would like to show a few more slides because this is purely about the opportunities and how we should respond. Because so there could be some immediate drives to rebound and mitigate the impact. This is actually I take from some few research from McKinsey and Deloitte. How, as a supply chain professionals, how you should think to mitigate the impact. Extremely important for us. We should revisit, protect our talents. We should protect our customer interest at this moment. As I said, when I say immediate, basically maybe down the line from 6 to 1 years. And we should rely on our crisis management task force. We should make sure they have risk adaptability. We should make sure disruption resiliency. How strong we are and able to absorb the shock. That's the resiliency. Vulnerabilities checklist, we should make sure, we should assess our health, cash flow health, and liquidity. And we should make sure hygiene process is standard, business continuity management. And most important, we should make sure digitization process up and run and the transparency. As people are using all those buzzwords like agile and this resiliency and all these stuffs, but this is now it means we should make sure we should be adaptable. And last but not the least, we should map our critical vendors. As I said, supply chain is gaining the highest level of traction nowadays. But that was the long immediate term, but what would be the long-term challenge? Or what would be the long-term drivers, I would say enablers to survive, to sustain? We should make sure we build the smart supply chain. It's a data-driven supply chain. And we must ensure the tiers transparency. Currently, as I said, the global supply chain is so complex. We have multi-layer tiers supplier. We should walk extra mile to get the visibility of my third tier, second tier, third tier. And the business time, real-time business forecast is extremely important. We talked about the agility, resiliencies. This is for surviving. Digital automation, it would be our next destination, low touch supply chain. We should, digital transformation, we talked about all those words, IoT, AI, and I'm not zooming all those stuffs. Now we should start thinking phase by phase, recovery plan and execute. We should sense the risk, analyze and configure our destiny. What if scenarios is extremely important. And going through our own supply chain strategy and redesign the networks is extremely important at this critical moment. Some sectors is coming and going to be very trendy and very, you will see how they flourish, how they boom. We were talking about since decades, e-commerce, online shopping, e-learning, e-sports, e-business. I'm actually running a little bit first, I know. And we are heavily depending on the social media, all those stuffs like YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and the way we are doing this session. Moving forward, you will see a lot of attention for indoor appliance, smartphone, home security, indoor game stuffs and activities. Air purification is another area. And okay, contactless payment online, mobile wallet, Google Wallet, all those stuffs is coming up. Networking and connectivity is extremely important because even for this, before this session, we ensured our connectivity is working fine. And e-medicine, telehealth, all those types is coming up. Organic packaged food, you will see a spike in future because you remember people are saying, regardless it's true or false, this type of virus actually the originated from wet market. As I said, regardless it's true or false, but I see the spike in online shopping, the organic packaged foods. I myself actually bought many tuna fish, canned food and all this stuff. So this is few examples how our industry will shape up in future. Okay, probably this is my last slide. Of course, challenge, uncertainties is there, but this is what I'm taking as wake-up call for the whole industry, whole world. We need to make sure our stepping stones are solid enough, as we use the term resilient. We need to take a lot of messages from these culprit COVID virus, and we need to position ourselves for the future. But nevertheless, this virus is giving us a lot of hope. We see the opportunity. Remember every challenge, live up with some opportunities. It's we who should actually hunt for the opportunities. If I don't hunt opportunity by myself, basically I'm letting others to grab the opportunities. So few bubble you see. I was planning how I should end up my session. You see the water is in Niagara, water is dropping down hundreds of feet inside, but you see the hope. You see the rainbow, you see the sunshine, sun is rising there. It's not locked down. It's not yet, shut down. World is moving. You see the nature is singing, the dolphin is singing in the Bay of Bengal and everywhere, and the animals on the street, the nature back from quarantine. We are going to back a new normal. It's not a normal, it's a new normal. We are going to have a stay-at-home economy. We will have a green business ecosystem. Of course, this is what we dreamed for, more family time. COVID is allowing us. We'll see the purchasing and consumption behavioral pattern. And this COVID is proving how remotely and we can learn, we can earn. So tomorrow, hardly you can believe that somebody will fly from US or North America just to attend 3 hours meeting in Singapore. Of course, organization will think twice because it's already proved things are moving. So it's we who should define our destiny, define our next exit for future. Thank you all. Stay safe. That's end of my presentation. Over to you, moderator Rashid Bhai.
Thank you, Atiq Bhai. Excellent, excellent presentation. We're amazed for your presentation, and you have been very deeply listening to your presentation. And you have been rightly pointed out about the short-term, long-term, the plans and overcomes. And yes, it's a great presentation.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Yes, panelists, we have now going to for question and answer session. So there is a few questions. First of all, I would like to ask your Atiq Bhai one question. Our participant Shahriar Malik has been raised a question to Atiq Bhai that we are heavily dependent on the China. So do you see to move sourcing from China as a future action of the which countries or regions potential to be alternate sourcing? What would be our alternate sourcing? Because whole world is rely on the China.
Okay, thanks. I think I know the, from whom, Rashid Bhai?
Yes, sorry, wait.
No, I said I know the person anyway. It's a very, very good question. And of course, as a supply chain professional, we all are experienced. We know, we can sense what's happening in future. But from my organizational point of view, in my industry point of view, we actually we are taking long-term strategic plan to move something from China. We already established 5G factory in US. It's officially launched, and we are actually disseminating the industry. We are disseminating the industries from China. But as I said, I gave some indication that with these wake-up call, the global leaders are now thinking to actually redesign their network mainly on component suppliers and semiconductors and PCBs, all these stuffs, 100 types of automobile in telecom, automobile and global IT industries depending on China. Around 20, as I said, world factory, around 15 to 20% components coming from China. This is the time actually the industry leaders are thinking of. So we will see the change, but as we are still in the process, uncertainty process, changing process, nobody knows where we are heading to, but we will, this is one thing we all acknowledged and admit, there will be some change the way we are doing the business ecosystem today. Thanks.
Thank you, Atiqul. And our next question, Mr. Habib Hasibur Rahman. So he's asking about the how can we expand our supply network to mitigate the business disruption or so on. So anybody can answer, Charlie, Salin Bhai, whoever wants to answer. How we can expand our supply networks?
Maybe I'll share something.
Yeah.
I think many companies are going to rethink on how they actually manage their supply networks. They're going to spend money to understand what to do now that this thing already happened. There will be more opportunities for them to look at other locations, but I think the tendency is to really put it back to their own respective geographic entities or their respective countries. You know, they want to become self-sufficient. Many of the companies would like to have self-sufficient, but they're going to look at many alternative suppliers. So assessment of suppliers is going to be key, you know, because they would expect that some of the suppliers are going to become short-lived as they really, you know, try to extend their breadth of life. So many supplier assessments is going to happen because they need to validate the sustainability and risk management of the suppliers. So it's going to be difficult, but they have no choice. And if they don't have no choice, they themselves will have to close their own respective business as well.
Well, and again, one more question to, as Mr. Atiq Bhai has been mentioned, e-commerce and commerce will be the future post-COVID. And do you see the probability to control overall artificial intelligence or internet WWE by China to 5G network?
If I got the question correctly, because you are breaking, but if I got the question, the potential of artificial intelligence, is it?
Yeah, I repeat again, the artificial intelligence over e-commerce, m-commerce via China 5G network. The China is dominating the 5G network. Okay.
Yeah, I think there is a big discussion across the globe, especially Mr. Trump raised these discussions and he actually initiated all these drives. Get China 5G raise, I mean, China from 5G implementation or deployment in his country. So few countries still halting or acknowledging Mr. Trump's recommendation, like Canada. They haven't banned anything from Huawei. But if I, holistic point of view, if I say, definitely, we cannot, China will be there. China, the big giant is anyway, will be dominating the world in many respects. But as a consumer, as a supplier, we should play smartly where and how we're gonna connect our source, strategic parts especially. So we should actually map the critical components. And this 5G is running across the world. I know Huawei is dominating, but we are coming neck to neck. And after this pandemic, the trust to our Chinese friends, I don't know the level of trust currently we have or we had before tomorrow, because media and everything is saying that they are hiding some info and all these stuffs. But you never know, things are moving every day. I don't know tomorrow's, I see the breaking news, what would be the next breaking news? So uncertainty is everywhere. Yeah, I don't know, I answered properly, but I tried. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, dear panelists, being a moderator, I would like to take one privilege. I would like to ask one question. Should I?
Sure.
So I'd like to listen to our Salim. So after COVID situation, post-COVID pandemic situation, so what do you think? What are the soft skills that the industries will be considered to cope up the power adaptability for the employer and employee both sides. Salim bhai.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
can you repeat the question?
I said that after post COVID scenario situation, so what are the soft skills will be market driven for the employer and employee both?
Well, thank you very much. You know, I think there will be a lot of things coming up in terms of, if I see the demand opportunities. I can give you one example. Like in 2012, when I was working for Mina Bazaar, we started a concept of home delivery and online order placement. So at that time, it was not that much successful. But this time, you can see the retail stores. It is a boom. So particularly all the retail stores like Mina Bazaar, Agora, Shopno, they're fully loaded with it. So if I go one by one, the industry for a short-term period, there are certain industry will have an impact, and the opposite to that, there will be other industry will have a lot of opportunities. So particularly, I believe that IT industry, in terms of knowledge, information visibility, in terms of SAP, in terms of all over the country globalization, that is very important. So companies like FMCG, food industry and everything, they should develop and acquire that type of skill in terms of order taking and order placement. Okay, so I believe these industries very important. In the same time, soft skills like, you know, data transferring technology or data transfer, it is not required. That there are a lot of industries which is located now in America or in Europe or the third world, first world countries that may have an opportunity to shift to Bangladesh. So in that perspective, I think in terms of soft skill will be also required, like communications, risk resilient skills like risk management, operating computers and softwares.
Okay, thank you, Salim bhai. So we are already close our time. So if you participant and the panel, if we allow, we can go 15 more minutes. Is it okay for you?
Absolutely, absolutely.
So Shubhra, I'd like to ask you to open the participants' mic so that like participant can raise questions so more lively, more interactively. So would you do please, Shubhra?
So I have one question to Saleheen bhai.
Okay.
So can I proceed?
Yes,
Please, please.
Yeah, Saleheen bhai, what we have seen every day, we are wasting a lot many milks, which the company like Aki's or Arong, they cannot collect from the farmers at this moment. So localize, is there some I mean arrangement the company can advise to their farmers so that they locally utilize that milk and produce something to sell to the local community or local area?
Thank you very much. This is a very pertinent question because hundreds and millions of dollars worth of, you know, milk is now wasted. But it is a first time experience from the Bangladesh supply chain industry or the global supply chain industry that people cannot go to work or even collect because you are fighting against a virus that you cannot see, right? This is the first time experience. So what I can relate this example to an industry called Amul. What they have done, whenever there is a demand and supply fluctuations, what you need to do during the lean period, off-peak period, you need to collect the milk and you need to convert the milk from milk to other raw material. That's why our company like Aki's, we have decided that we will convert, apart from our dairy, we will have a powder milk facilities. So at this moment, if we had a powder milk facilities, then we could consume as much as possible, store it, convert it, and then use it for a other market. I think that Pran and Meghna Group and other companies also do that. But there is another challenge. As you know that we are collecting milk from all over Bangladesh, and these are a very micro level, maybe 1 or 2 cattle owners are just supplying. So we don't have a countrywide cold chain system. So I think this is a national problem as a country, from the government, as well as from the private level investments. We need to develop region-wise, village-wise cold chain system so that we can preserve it, and whenever it is required, we can use it. So it is a national crisis and eye-opening for that. There's a huge wastage of money and everything. Does it answer your question?
Yes, thank you, Saleen bhai.
Thank you.
So next question, please, Shubha.
Okay, to our attendees, if you have any question, you can ask to our speakers. Mir Hasinur Rahman have a question. So I have unmuted him. Maybe he disconnected or something.
Maybe
Okay.
Abdul Rahman want to ask question. Could you please try Abdul Rahman?
Okay. Abdul Rahman, I have unmuted. Mr. Abdul Rahman, you can ask question to our speakers.
You can go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Rashid bhai.
Thank you.
Actually, first of all, I would like to thank all the presenters, and it is good to see Atiq bhai after a big break. Great to see you with a nice presentation. I have
pleasure.
one
Thank you.
issue, that is, do you have any suggestion for, like, I'm working in a LPG industry, you know, so any suggestion for the oil and gas plant from supply chain perspective from the presenters? That is basically what I want to know.
Anybody can give answer.
Well, I would like to take the question and then maybe some other can respond. Actually, from my experience, you know that supply chain is always considered a back-end job, and mostly sales and marketing are given the highest priority in the context of Bangladesh, not in America or other countries. But you know, now this is the first time I can realize, even the local companies, they have started to realize it is such a sensitive area that if you cannot fasten it, if you cannot fix the problem, that your P&L and the balance sheet, everything will be jeopardized. So my first observation, without having an experience in gas and oil industry, I think it is a high time to develop and map an end-to-end risk assessment. Because from planning to your delivery, what are the areas that disruption can happen, and what are the external unforeseen element can cause a showstopper. So you need to be proactive in terms of the port, in terms of the transportation, users and everything. I think this could be a vital time to diagnose and have your foolproof plan. Thank you.
Okay, I think our next question is Imam. Imam is there. Are you want to ask any question? Charlie, would you like to give answer again regarding that question?
Yeah, I came from energy company, and during this time of crisis, when there's not a lot of production, energy companies has to really focus more on cost reduction, risk management, and efficiency. But you know what? Not a lot of the typical energy company is not very innovative in supply chain, so they're gonna really be forced to actually, you know, jump into the pool and be very innovative just to sustain also, because you have actually three alternatives: increase your market share, which you cannot do; increase your price, and you cannot do; and your last remaining alternative is to really cut on cost. And if you don't do that, they're gonna cut the employees right immediately. And this is what we're going to see. A lot of people in the world is going to lose their jobs, you know. And the industries that doesn't have, you know, need right now are going to get hit first. The non-essentials type of industries. But then I like the example a while ago about that milk, you know. That problem on logistics on milk, there will be very good entrepreneurs that's going to capitalize on supply chain and profit from it also in the right way. So there is also so much opportunity that this offers us, that the pandemic offers us, for the innovative and entrepreneurial supply chain people. Can you just imagine if you solve the problem of that cold storage or the cold chain system? Then you will actually benefit and be able to profit from that opportunity as well. So you have to take a look and see some opportunities that you guys can actually help out and eventually also take some level of good dividends.
Thank you. So, any other questions? Anybody? Shahid bhai?
আমার কোনো কোশ্চেন নেই, আমি শুনলাম সবকিছু ঠিক মতো। তার কোনো পার্টিসিপেন্ট, আমাদের আর কোনো সিনিয়র মেম্বার বা কারো কোনো কোশ্চেন নাই?
Yes, anybody can raise your questions. The floor is open to all panelists.
Hello, I have a question to Saren bhai. Saren bhai, it was a very good presentation regarding the industry that was going to be hit. The first one was dairy, which somebody else said the question. I asked the question. So,
আপনার ভয়েসটাকে একটু কমিয়ে দিয়ে বলা যায়, খুব বেশি জোরে হচ্ছে তো ইকো হচ্ছে, প্লিজ বলেন আপনি।
Saren bhai, can you hear me now? Is it okay?
হ্যাঁ, বলেন প্লিজ।
So I had two parts of the question. One is already answered, the main dairy one. The second part one was the poultry. So if chicken is going to be out of market due to like shortage of supply of antibiotics and medicines, then I think there will be a protein crisis in the market in the next 3 to 4 months, I'm suspecting. So is there anything you can suggest on the poultry market so that the industry leads on and we don't have a protein supply shortage?
রাশেদ ভাই, আপনি কি if you heard the question properly, আমাকে একটু রিপিট করা যায় কি? ইকো হচ্ছিল।
হ্যাঁ, কোশ্চেনটা একটু বেশি ইকো হচ্ছে। কেউ?
আচ্ছা, আমি শুনছি। আমি রাশেদ ভাই বলি। সালেহীন ভাই, the question was so far I can understand যে he is asking about the poultry medicine. There is a scarcity of the poultry medicine in the market, and like I guess he is asking for the suggestion. How you can mitigate the risk. Right?
Well, I got your point. Thank you very much. This is a very vital question because I work for the Kazi farm, and Kazi farm dominates almost the 65 to 70% of the market share. You know, in terms of the vaccine, if you want to import, there are hardly few companies, 5 or 6 companies, particularly from Europe, from Germany, France, and other companies. They manufacture that. And the biggest challenge is that it is such a sensitive, before you test it and inject it to your birds or your dairy kettles, you need to have a trial farm, you need to get it tested at least 3 to 4 times, and then you order that. And there is a high chances that the batch sometimes fails. So it's not like that the vaccine or the medicine, whatever you are using, instantly you will shift from one supplier to another supplier. Number one. Number two, whenever you bring it in Bangladesh, as soon as it arrives in the port, there are certain tests and licenses that you need to get it. So what we have done as soon as I joined in Kazi farm, so we decided if there is any crisis happens, so we need to have at least 2 to 3 alternate suppliers ready. And we tested the vaccines and medicines in the trial farms. And in some cases, maybe the result was not apple to apple, but considering the challenges or in a bad time, we get it approved. So the first thing what you need to do, you need to have a parallel product ready and get it tested. And number 2 is you need to have a very high contact and very good channel ready in Bangladesh airport, because Bangladesh airport, the refrigeration capacity is very small. So when there are huge traffics, you cannot do anything. Sometimes they offload from the refrigerator, and that is our infrastructure problem. And another issue is that due to their very batch filling frequency, so it's not like that you will bring the product, keep it in your storage for a long time. So the demand and supply, there is always a vulnerability. So the best part is if you have an alternate supplier ready, and if you have a very good ties, and now at this crisis moment, you don't need to bother about the price will shoot up. But that's a very sensitive for the poultry industry, and particularly the dairy industry. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Shubha, please meet up mics. And I think we have been across our time, have been lively discussion and the question answer session. So I'd like to wrap up the sessions. It's a nicely discussion. A lot of things will be come out like collaboration, resource sharing, short-term strategy, long-term plan, so on coming out. So I think it will be helpful for our supply chain professionals and experts who are working in this field. So thank you everybody for passion sharing and joining this webinar, our second sessions. And especially thanks for the panelists who are from different time zone, spare the valuable time for us to give insightful thought. So thank you everybody. So I'd like to again congratulations to everybody and close this session for this.
Thank you very much.
Thank
you very much.
Atiq bhai, for the wonderful presentation. Lot of insights. Thank you, Mr. Charlie, for your brilliant, wonderful presentation. Thank you, Rashid bhai, for everything, and Latif bhai for all the arrangements.
All participants, especially bhai.
Thank you.
And thank you, Asghar bhai, for all the wonderful events and all arrangements. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you, Atiq bhai. Thank you, Charlie.
And I'd like
Thank
to
you.
our journal from DCCI.
Daniel bhai, thank you.
Journal for
For the organization, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for organizing such a nice event.
Thank you. Hopefully, we'll see our next session. We will be announced if we can conduct our next session.
Inshallah.
Let you know.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you all. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.